And joining us right now is Laura Zeilinger. She is the director of the D.C. Department of Human Services. You know, each day this week we're checking in with a different department in the Muriel Bowser administration. A few months in now. I want to see how things are going. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, the mayor announced her budget last week, and there was a lot in there, but she definitely focused on the plight of homelessness, and I know that that falls into your category there at the Department of Human Services. Let me ask you, ma'am, I don't think anybody wants people living on the street. It's a horrible thing, and I feel, my heart goes out to people who are living on the street and are homeless. But it seems to me that each administration, each time we increase more housing and more shelters and more availability for the homeless in the district, it doesn't seem to make the problem go away. Is it possible that by continuing to increase services, we're actually attracting more homeless people to the district because they know that they will be accommodated?
Actually, homelessness is a problem that we absolutely see that we can solve when we invest in the solutions. So the first thing we need to do is we need to really look at where we're putting our dollars. We've seen that where we've invested in the things that we know work, that we actually are driving the numbers in the right direction. So the story I think we're not telling is that chronic homelessness among unaccompanied adults is actually down in the district as a result of the investments that we've made in housing subsidies with intensive services for that population.
Let me just jump in. What do you mean by unaccompanied individuals?
So we have an adult who's not accompanied by a minor child and is experiencing something we call chronic homelessness. So they've got a disability and they've had a long episode of homelessness or a lot of repeated episodes of homelessness. Folks who have been living sometimes unsheltered or sheltered for a very long time. So homelessness among that population is down when we invest in supportive housing without any barriers to entry. So most jurisdictions think when we invest in housing, when we invest in services, we're going to be a magnet. People are going to come to us to get their needs met. But people say that all over the country. I used to work in the Obama administration on homelessness, and there was rarely a local elected I met who didn't think people came to their city to be homeless.
But if I could add, this is John Bolton. What I seem to hear you saying is that the solution to the homelessness problem is to provide subsidies to put them into public housing, which certainly for the individual is better than living on the streets. But that's not really the solution either, is it? Isn't the solution to find work for these people so that they're neither homeless nor on public subsidies?
The solution to homelessness is always housing, but it doesn't always mean that we're putting them in public housing without services and that they don't go to work. But it's really hard to hold down a job if you're carrying your belongings with you, or even to get a job without the stability of a place. So we're giving people the opportunity to have the stability of a home from which they can lift themselves up. So it doesn't mean that they all just all of a sudden
Well, what's your percentage of people, once you put them into public housing, that then get jobs and leave public housing?
So they're not all in public housing. Sometimes they're in housing neighbors with other folks. Just they have a subsidy that helps pay for the rent. Sometimes for a short amount of time, sometimes for a long period of time. But and many people, the majority of people who, depending on the situation that they're coming from, will end up from that platform going to work if they have addiction, dealing with their addiction, dealing with their mental health. So it's not just housing without the services. What's really important is they are getting the services, they're getting the opportunity, and it's less expensive for the taxpayer.
Our guest, I'm sorry, I just wanted to reintroduce you. Our guest is Laura Zeilinger. She is the director of D.C. Department of Human Services under the Bowser administration. And I wanted to ask you, once we get the homeless people into the shelters, what are we doing to improve conditions at the shelters? It's now, we just acknowledged the one-year anniversary last month of the horrific story of Relisha Rudd, the young girl who went missing from a shelter. These shelters are not the greatest places for people to live, are they? Especially families.
No, not at all. Yeah, no, and so the mayor was really clear that children should not be growing up in homeless shelters. They should not be growing up in D.C. General. So part of the solution is we need to have a crisis response system. We need to have a safety net when people experience a housing crisis that is a better environment to provide people what they need to move out quickly back into the community. So we're part of the mayor's budget proposal really invests in smaller community-based shelters that are going to be much just better equipped to support people in a healthy, dignified environment to move out as fast as possible.
Well, what are you doing once they're in the healthy and dignified environment? What are you doing? What incentives are you providing to get jobs so that they can be self-reliant and not either in public housing or living with others dependent on government services?
Yeah. So the premise of your question is that people don't want to work, and I'll tell you,
absolutely,
very few folks that I've met who aren't trying to get jobs.
That's just completely wrong. That's just completely
wrong. What
are
you doing to incentivize
Let me go back to the question I asked a moment
work
ago that you didn't answer. What is the success rate of getting people into jobs? I mean, you have statistics. You know how many people you have in your program. What percentage of them move on to gainful employment?
Well, I mentioned that we have permanent supportive housing for people who are chronically homeless. So, and then we have a rapid rehousing program that's really for folks who they're not coming in with disabilities and years of homelessness. So there are folks who they're eligible for, and they should obtain Social Security benefits because they're going to need some support in the long run. They may be veterans coming back with some disabilities, and they're, and we want to have a solution that isn't, that is tailored to people based on their needs. So it's not who is everybody who has experienced homelessness and goes into housing. What is the percentage of those people who go to work? But what is the percentage of people who can go to work, who do go to work? And while that's a statistic I don't have at my fingertips, and I wish I did, I will tell you that it's the vast majority of people.
Okay.
Our clients who are in that program are often also our TANF recipients. So one thing we've done here at DHS is integrate the employment services in our TANF program with the services that they get in housing to support them to really meaningfully gain employment.
Ms. Zeilinger, you've been in the job now, so you were appointed by Mayor Bowser, right? So you've been in the job for a few months. See, now, I've always said, and I have great sympathy for the task at hand for you. I mean, this is I mean, you've taken on quite a challenge, and I always think if I were in your shoes, going in and I would look at the task ahead of me, I would think, okay, if I could just write a blank check, if I could get as much money as possible to solve this problem once and for all, this is what it would take, and then of course you'd have to work backwards from there. So I'm curious if you've thought of that. I mean, if you could just, if in your mind, to solve the homelessness problem in D.C., how much would it cost?
It is really about the investments in affordable housing. So we have folks, 400,000 people. I'm sorry, we have 40,000 people in the district who are severely rent burdened. So that means that they are paying far too much of their income just to maintain themselves in housing.
Okay.
So solving the homelessness crisis is not any way separate and apart from solving the affordable housing crisis. So we have to make investments so that people are not so severely rent burdened. When that happens, they are far too many residents are one paycheck away from experiencing homelessness. So many of our hearts go out to them, but many of them are sitting right next to us, right? And so we've got to make sure that we're really that when somebody has a crisis in their life, they're not things are not so tight that the next month
then they're living out of their car. You know what? We are out of time. We'd love to. Really fascinating conversation, and it's something that many of us care about, and we all have ideas on how to solve it. We'd love to have you back again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
That's Laura Zeilinger. She is the director of the D.C. Department of Human Services.